being good. Maybe it's the biggest lie of the modern world. We were taught to be a good person, to be docile, to be humble. But no one ever talked about how this goodness consumes you, how it weakens you from the inside out, and how it traps your soul in a cage. Have you ever considered that these virtues imposed upon you might be the result of a mental collapse that began 2,000 years ago, a secret revenge of the weak against the strong? Friedrich Nietzsche, philosophy's most dangerous doctor, thought exactly that. According to him, this is not just a virtue. It is a disease disguised as weakness, slowly causing the soul to decay. And this video will cut into this disease like a scalpel. So, you might be wondering, where do we even begin this autopsy? We must lower the scalpel to the deepest point, to the origin of words. Nietzsche was that unsettling philosopher who doubted everything, and the thing he doubted most were the concepts of good and evil, presented to us as unquestionable truths. He asked, where did these words come from? Who created these values, and for what purpose? To find the answer to these questions, he takes us back in time to two different worlds, to the birthplace of two different moralities, master morality and slave morality. First, there was master morality. Think of the nobles of ancient Rome, the heroes of Homer, the Viking warriors. For these people, good was synonymous with themselves. Good meant noble, strong, proud, healthy, full of life, creative, and risk-taking. Their values were not born in reaction to someone else. They burst forth as an overflow of their own being, their own power, and their own joy for life. They held a deep reverence for themselves and trusted their own judgment. Their morality was a self-affirmation. Bad, on the other hand, simply meant not good. Common, plebeian, weak, simple, cowardly. This was not a matter of sinfulness, but a matter of taste and aesthetics. For them, an action was either noble or it was not. But then, the greatest and quietest revolution in history occurred. The slave revolt in morality. The oppressed, the weak, the sick, and the downtrodden masses could not compete with the masters on their terms. They lacked physical strength, wealth, or courage. The only weapon they had was their mind. And they used this weapon for the greatest revaluation of all values operation in history. The fuel for this revolution was that deep, festering emotion Nietzsche called ressentiment. This is not simple anger. It is a vicious cycle that works silently in the soul, grows inside, and eventually poisons all value judgments. The gaze of the slave is not turned inward. It is always directed outward, at the master who oppresses him. Since the slave could not say no to the master's power, he began to call that power itself evil. Nietzsche calls these poisonous moral preachers tarantulas. They preach equality and justice, but they do so not out of love or nobility, but out of a secret hatred for all that is stronger than themselves. The master's pride became demonic vanity. The master's power became cruel tyranny. Then they transformed their own weaknesses into virtues. Their inability to take revenge became forgiveness. Their weakness became humility. Their submission became obedience. This, according to Nietzsche, is precisely where the modern ideal we call the good person was born. Weakness was presented as virtue with a mask of intelligence. What we call good today is mostly the morality of those who lack the courage to say yes to life, the morality of those who fear life. But why does any of this matter today? What I've just described might sound like an ancient history lesson. Nobles, slaves, a moral war from 2,000 years ago. You might be thinking, so what? What does this have to do with me? Honestly, when I first read Nietzsche, I thought he was exaggerating too. But then I turned on the news. I spent 5 minutes on social media. and I saw that Nietzsche, with frightening clarity, saw our present day all the way from his time. Now let's talk about the symptoms. The modern symptoms of this sickness of being good are everywhere. Symptom 1, the people-pleaser syndrome. This is the most common symptom. That person who tries to please everyone, who can never say no. Micro story. Think about it. You're at work. You're exhausted. But a colleague asks for help. The first voice inside you says, "No, I have my own work to do." But what comes out of your mouth is, "Of course, I'll take care of it right away." Which voice is that? The voice of your strength or your fear? Symptom 2, virtue signaling and online moralizing. Social media is the modern playground for resentment. Micro story. Or how about that social media debate? You don't really care about the topic, but you post the most correct, most moral comment and watch the likes roll in. That little rush of superiority you feel in that moment. That is the modern taste of the false virtue Nietzsche spoke of. Which of these first 2 symptoms have you seen in your own life? Let me know in the comments. It's more common than you think. Symptom 3, the sickness of pity. For Nietzsche, modern pity doesn't eliminate suffering. It multiplies it. It sanctifies the sufferer as a victim and robs them of the will to overcome their situation with their own power. Micro story. A friend of yours constantly makes the same mistake and complains about it. You pity them, you console them, but do you realize you're actually encouraging them to stay in that pit of weakness? You take refuge in the comfort of saying, "Oh, you poor thing," instead of challenging them with, "You can get through this." Symptom 4, the sickness of equality. Nietzsche wasn't against equal rights, but against the idea that all people are of equal value. For him, this was the most dangerous weapon of slave morality. The herd tries to drag down anyone who is superior, more creative, or stronger by chanting, "But we are all equal." This is the tyranny of mediocrity. This is the sickness, a comfortable, socially approved weakness that appears moral. A state of mind that constantly seeks approval from others, fears its own instincts, and suppresses its potential for the sake of being a good person. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Millions of people live with the fatigue created by this modern morality. So, is there a way out of this? According to Nietzsche, yes. But his cure is at least as terrifying as the sickness itself, because this isn't a prescription, it's a challenge. And now we arrive at the terrifying cure Nietzsche proposes. Why is it terrifying? Because it means dynamiting a life built on comfortable lies. It takes you from the safe warmth of the herd and leaves you all alone in the freezing cold. The cure begins with a ruthless act of questioning, a kind of mental archaeology. Nietzsche tells you to take a philosophical hammer and strike at the foundation of everything you've been told is a value. You must take every concept, every virtue taught to you as good or bad. Lay it on the table and ask this gut-wrenching question: who does this value serve? Does this rule come from a place that elevates and strengthens life, one that joyfully says yes, or from a place that denies life, weakens it, and is born from fear? Stop for a moment and think of 3 values taught to you as good: humility, sacrifice, security. Now take that hammer and ask, do these values elevate life, or do they protect those who fear it? Do they make you stronger or more docile? This means setting fire to the entire moral heritage you've received from your family, society, and religion, and seeing with your own eyes what is truly valuable in the ashes. Embrace the values that make you grow, not the ones you were just taught to accept. So, what do you build on the ruins of those old values? With what compass do you find your way? According to Nietzsche, the answer is hidden in life itself. in its most fundamental, most honest, and most ruthless drive, the will to power. This is not about crushing others or dominating them. That's just a slander against the will to power invented by slave morality. The true will to power is the fundamental drive of the universe. It's the desire of everything in life not just to survive, but to go beyond. Growth, expansion, overcoming obstacles, self-realization, and mastery. A flower breaking through concrete to reach the sun is the will to power. An artist's struggle through sleepless nights to perfect their work is the will to power. For you, conquering a fear, learning a new skill, creating a stronger, wiser, more creative version of yourself. That is the will to power. While slave morality aims only to survive and reduce pain, master morality and its engine, the will to power, aim to live life to its fullest and to overcome oneself. The cure requires you to stop seeing this fundamental life force as a sin and to start honoring it. When you accept this principle, the goal is no longer just to exist, but to overcome yourself. This journey of self-overcoming leads to an ultimate goal, to which Nietzsche gives a name, to become a bridge to the Übermensch, Overman. So what does this journey of self-overcoming actually look like? Nietzsche explains it with a poetic three-stage metaphor, the three metamorphoses of the spirit. First, the spirit becomes a camel. The camel kneels and bears the heaviest burdens. This is the spirit that respectfully carries society's values, the thou shalts, the thou shalt nots, all the moral and cultural loads. It is obedient and patient. Most of us spend our lives as a camel, but to overcome itself, the spirit must go into the desert and become a lion. The lion throws off those heavy burdens. It is the spirit that says no. Зрение, что разрывает свои цепи, что сражается за свою свободу. The lion battles the dragon of old values and roars. I will. It wins its freedom. But just destroying isn't enough. To create new values, the lion must transform again. The spirit must finally become a child. The child is innocence, a forgetting, a new beginning, a self-propelling wheel. The child, free from the burden of the past, creates its own game by saying a sacred yes to life. This is the creator of new values who plays the game of life as a work of art. So Nietzsche says, first we carry, then we rebel, and finally we create. The Übermensch possesses the creative and life-affirming spirit of this child. And the spirit that can say yes like a child is now ready for life's most difficult test. This is the pinnacle of Nietzsche's philosophy, his most terrifying and beautiful challenge. Amore fati, the love of one's fate. This isn't about passively submitting to your fate. It's the opposite. This concept is tested by another of Nietzsche's shocking ideas, the eternal recurrence. Imagine this. In your loneliest loneliness, a demon comes to you and says, this life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more. And there will be nothing new in it, but every pain and every joy and every thought and sigh, and everything unutterably small or great in your life must return to you, all in the same succession and sequence. Would you throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon who spoke thus? Or have you once experienced a tremendous moment when you would have answered him, you are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine? Amor fati is the struggle to live your life so fully, so authentically, so courageously, that you could embrace the idea of repeating it for all eternity, with all its pain and imperfections, as a blessing. To love your fate is to unconditionally say yes to every moment that made you who you are, not just the good moments, but the worst, most painful ones too. Because without them, you wouldn't be you. So, what are you supposed to do with all this? This doesn't mean you must become a bad person. It means you must stop being a false one. It means going beyond good and evil, and starting to judge from a place of strong or weak, life-affirming or life-denying. Therefore, I'm not going to offer you a practical to-do list. Nietzsche doesn't give you a list. He gives you a sledgehammer, and it's up to you to use it. That sledgehammer is waiting for you to strike your own mask first. Whether you use it or not is your choice. But if you're wondering where to land the first blow, here is a starting point. The next time you do something just for the sake of being a good person, when you give a compliment, rush to help, or agree with an idea, stop and ask yourself that terrifying question: did I do this from an overflow of my own strength and joy for life, or from a place of fear? Was it the fear of being disliked, of being excluded, of conflict that pushed me to do this? That's when you have to face the truth. And it's not easy. This is where Nietzsche's terrifying cure truly begins. Stop. Think. The final question isn't whether you have the courage to take the cure. It's simpler and more terrifying than that. Do you want to be liked, or do you want to be alive? Write just one sentence in the comments, not for the algorithm, for yourself, something you're ready to question.